The hallway was filled with laughter, chatter, and the clanging of lockers slamming shut as students spilled out from their third-period classes. Among the crowd was Eliza Monroe, a quiet junior with thick glasses, dark curly hair tied in a loose ponytail, and a second-hand backpack that seemed 2 sizes too large. She wasn't unpopular, just invisible. A straight-A student, she kept her head down, her earbuds in, and her dreams to herself. But today, something felt different. The moment she stepped out of English class, she noticed the way people looked at her, whispers, snickers, and sideways glances. It didn't take long to find out why. Plastered across her locker in bright red ink was the word, loser. Eliza's chest tightened. She stood frozen for a second, her eyes locked on the vandalism that now labeled her existence. Her hands trembled as she reached up to pull it off, but before she could, a deep voice cut through the hallway. Well, well. Look who's finally seeing her true label. It was Derek Knox, linebacker, king of the football team, and self-appointed ruler of Ridgefield High. His 2 sidekicks, Tony and Brett, flanked him like overgrown shadows. They sauntered up, Derek's smirk wide and cruel. You think you're better than everyone, huh? Sitting in the front row, answering all the questions. Teachers love you. But out here, you're nothing. Eliza kept silent, eyes locked on the floor. Speak when spoken to, freak, Tony said, shoving her shoulder. Brett moved closer, boxing her in against the lockers. The hallway began to clear. No one stepped in. No one ever did. Let's show her what happens to smart-mouth nobodies, Derek sneered. They advanced. And that's when it happened. In a blur, Eliza dropped her bag, bent her knees, and launched forward. Her knee struck Derek squarely in the groin with a force that surprised even her. The hall fell silent. Derek collapsed with a groan, crumpling like a defeated gladiator. His helmet-sized ego smashed. Tony and Brett froze. One tried to lunge, but Eliza stood her ground. Try me, she said, her voice calm, eyes blazing. Students had stopped walking. Phones were out. The moment was viral before it was even over. Principal Rayburn called her in after lunch. She sat in the front office, hands clasped tightly in her lap, waiting for the sentence that might end her school year, or her future. To her surprise, she wasn't alone. Mrs. Carter, the school counselor, stepped in with a file in hand. Eliza, you've never been in trouble. Not once. Your teachers speak highly of you. We reviewed the footage. What you did, well, it was self-defense. Rayburn sighed. But violence is never encouraged. However, in light of what we've uncovered about Derek's behavior, this wasn't an isolated incident. Are you suspending me? Eliza asked softly. No, Mrs. Carter said with a smile. We're commending you for your bravery. And we're launching an investigation. It turned out Derek had a history of threats, manipulation, harassment. And Eliza's act of courage cracked the silence that others were too afraid to challenge. One by one, students came forward. Some with their own stories, others with guilt written all over their faces for staying silent too long. That night, Eliza sat on her porch with her mom, watching the sunset. Her mother, a nurse working double shifts to keep food on the table, looked at her daughter with new eyes. You didn't just stand up for yourself, honey. You stood up for every kid who's ever been silenced. Eliza smiled. For the first time in years, she felt seen. You remember your dad's medal? Her mom asked suddenly. Eliza nodded. From the army? He once said real courage isn't about charging into battle, it's about standing up when it's easier to run. Eliza looked out into the fading light, heart full of thoughts. Maybe that's what I did. A few weeks later, the school held a mandatory seminar on bullying and mental health. The gymnasium was packed. Teachers, students, even parents. On the stage stood Eliza. She wasn't nervous. Not anymore. "My name is Eliza Monroe," she began. "And I'm not a loser. I'm not invisible. And neither are any of you." She spoke of courage, of silence, of the pain of being ignored, and the power of one moment of resistance. Applause thundered. She talked about the damage bullying does, not just in bruises, but in dreams, in confidence, in unseen battles fought in silence. Her voice cracked as she shared how some days she barely held on. How one cruel word can echo louder than 10 kind ones. But also how one brave moment can change everything. Derek was suspended. Later, he was removed from the football team entirely. It turned out his scholarship offers quietly vanished after the footage went public. The incident became a defining moment at Ridgefield High. Not because of the fall of a football star, but because of the rise of a quiet girl who had enough. Support groups formed in school. New policies were introduced. Teachers received training. Anonymous complaint boxes were placed outside counselor offices. A student-led initiative, Voices Matter, began to grow. And at the heart of it was Eliza. But that wasn't the end. Eliza was invited to speak at other schools. Her story, first shared online through a student's Instagram video, had gone viral. News outlets picked it up. "Teen girl ends bullying with one brave move," read the headline. She was offered a scholarship by a nonprofit that supported young women in leadership. Colleges started noticing. One school even offered her a spot on a self-defense panel for teen girls. She trained in martial arts, not to fight, but to teach other girls how to stand their ground. What began as a painful moment in a hallway had ignited something far greater, a movement. One afternoon, months later, Eliza received a letter. It was anonymous. The handwriting was shaky. "Dear Eliza. You don't know me, but I saw what you did. I was planning to end my life that day. I didn't think anyone stood up anymore. But then I saw you. And I thought, maybe it's not hopeless after all. Thank you. A life you saved." Eliza's eyes welled with tears. She clutched the note to her chest. That letter now stayed in her journal, taped gently to the inside cover, a reminder of what courage can ripple into. Years passed. Eliza graduated top of her class. She went on to study social psychology and public speaking. Her first book was titled "Stand Quiet No More," and it became a bestseller. She gave TED Talks. She mentored teenage girls. She created grants for students who had been victims of bullying. And once a year, she returned to Ridgefield High, to speak, to listen, to remember. She walked past those same lockers, her fingers brushing the metal where her pain had once lived. She smiled, not with bitterness, but with pride. Because she had turned that moment into a mission. Kindness doesn't always look like a hug. Sometimes it looks like a knee strike. Not out of anger, but to stop cruelty in its tracks. Because sometimes, to protect kindness, you must be brave. Eliza didn't just defend herself. She changed the story for every silent voice in that hallway. And somewhere, someone chose to live, because she chose to stand. Courage isn't about fists. It's about heart. Standing up doesn't just protect you, it can light a fire of hope in someone else's darkness. The world doesn't change through rage. It changes when one brave soul says, "Enough."